Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2 Jodie Farrell. We warmly welcome the family of Second Lieutenant John George Cosson, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Defence Force, Senator Jim Molan, Senator for New South Wales, Ms Liz Cosson, Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Ms Rhonda Vanzella, and Mr Glenn Keys, members of the Council of the Australian War Memorial. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant John George Cosson. John Cosson was born in London on the 8th of April 1866, the son of John Cosson Sr. and his wife Eliza. Affectionately known as Jack, he was 8 years old when he arrived in Western Australia, where his family settled and where he received his education. In his youth, he trained as a tent and sail maker and was a keen sportsman, participating in amateur boxing, swimming, running and cycling. In 1896, he moved to Coolgardie, where he opened a tent-making business. He met Elizabeth Mackenzie, and in 1900 the couple were married. The couple had 5 children before relocating to Kalgoorlie, where John worked as a turf commission agent. Shortly after, he relocated to the coastal city of Fremantle, where he was working as a tobacconist at the outbreak of the war in August 1914. Cosson was 49 years old when he enlisted into the Australian Imperial Force on the 12th of May 1915. Assigned to the 16th Infantry Battalion in June 1915, he embarked for active service aboard the troopship Chilka. Private Cosson arrived on Gallipoli in August. His first major battle took place at Lone Pine, days after his arrival on the peninsula. Australians and New Zealanders attacked Turkish defensive positions on the 6th of August 1915. When they reached the enemy lines, advancing troops encountered trenches that had been covered with pine logs, offering protection to the enemy and severely hindering the Australian advance. Troops were forced to break through the log roof, often engaging the enemy in hand-to-hand combat. Though the main objective was taken within 20 minutes, 4 days of intense fighting followed, costing more than 2,000 Australian casualties. Private John Cosson was wounded to his left thigh on the second day of the battle. His injuries were such that he was evacuated and transported to the 2nd Australian General Hospital in Cairo, where he remained for 2 months. He rejoined his unit on Gallipoli in October, where the 16th Battalion was involved in defending the Allies' front lines. Private Cosson was later awarded the Distinguished Conduct for Medal for leadership and patrol work in the front lines at Gallipoli. By the end of 1915, plans were underway for the Allies to evacuate. Cosson was among those remaining on Gallipoli as units were slowly being withdrawn from the lines. On the 15th of December, he wrote in his diary, "There is something in the wind as men are being sent away in dribs and drabs. If the Turks knew how few men were here, they would certainly have a go and would cause some trouble." Private Cosson was among the last men to leave the Australian positions on Gallipoli on the 20th of December 1915. Later, he wrote, "The great success of the whole evacuation speaks for itself, when I believe 2 killed and 3 wounded were the only casualties. There is no doubt the evacuation will be handed down as one of the brainiest events of the war." Following the retreat from Gallipoli, Cosson joined the rest of the AIF in Egypt, where on New Year's Day 1916, he was promoted to corporal. In April, he was commissioned to 2nd Lieutenant before being transferred to the newly formed 48th Battalion during the doubling of the AIF. Cosson arrived in France with his new battalion in June 1916. His first major action on the Western Front was to take place around the French village of Pozières, where the Allies were attempting to push the enemy back and capture the high ground. On the 7th of August 1916, the 48th Battalion was under heavy shell fire as the enemy launched a counterattack on their position. During the fighting, Lieutenant Cosson and his men captured 10 enemy prisoners. He sent his men and the prisoners back into the trenches, and he returned to no man's land. 1 hour later, he was hit by shell fire and killed in action. His comrade wrote to Cosson's brother, "I don't think there is an officer in the Australian Army better loved by his men or more game. I believe his mates did say he did not know what fear was. You can tell his wife and children that he was a soldier." John Cosson was 50 years old. His name is listed on the roll of honour up to my right. amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant George Cosson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.